Maria had always been a fighter. Life was never easy for her, but she carried her burdens with quiet strength. From the moment her daughter Lily was born, Maria promised herself she would give the little girl everything she never had. She worked long hours at small jobs cleaning houses, helping in shops, sometimes even sewing clothes late into the night just to make sure there was food on the table and rent paid on time. Lily was only 10 years old, but she already understood how hard her mother worked. She would often wake up in the middle of the night to see the faint light of a lamp glowing in the small living room, where Maria sat mending torn clothes with tired hands. Sometimes she would whisper, "Mama, please sleep," but Maria would just smile and say, "Don't worry, Lily. One day all this will change." That one day seemed to come closer when Maria finally received a call she had been waiting for. A company well known, big, and respected had invited her for an interview. It wasn't just any company. It was a chance at stability, at security, at a future where she wouldn't have to juggle 3 different jobs at once. The thought of it filled Maria with nervous excitement. She prepared her best outfit, ironed it carefully, and even practiced answering questions in front of the small mirror they had in their home. Lily watched her mother that week with glowing admiration. She saw the hope in Maria's eyes, the kind of hope that made her seem lighter, younger, almost as if all the years of struggle had melted away for a moment. They talked about what life might look like if Maria got the job. Maybe they could move to a slightly bigger apartment. Maybe Lily could have her own desk for homework instead of sharing the kitchen table. Maybe Maria could finally rest, even just a little. But life has a way of testing people when they least expect it. The night before the interview, Maria felt her body weaken. It began with a sharp headache and a heaviness in her chest. She brushed it off at first, telling herself it was only fatigue. She had worked too much, worried too much, and she simply needed a good night's rest. But as the hours passed, her condition worsened. Her skin grew pale, her breathing shallow, and her energy slipped away. Lily panicked. She rushed to her mother's side, holding her hand tightly. "Mama, are you okay? Should I call someone?" she asked, her voice trembling. Maria shook her head gently, forcing a weak smile. "No, sweetheart. I'll be fine. Just tired. I've worked too hard lately." But Lily could see it in her eyes, this wasn't just tiredness. Maria lay down, trying to gather strength for the morning, but her body refused to cooperate. She whispered, almost to herself, "I can't miss this interview. I can't let this chance go." Tears welled in her eyes, not because of the pain she felt, but because she feared the opportunity slipping away. Lily sat beside her, her small hands clutching her mother's. For the first time, she saw her mother's unshakable strength falter. Maria, who always stood tall against life's storms, now looked fragile, vulnerable, and defeated. Lily's heart ached, but in that ache, something else began to grow, a spark of determination. That night, Lily barely slept. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her mother's labored breathing. She thought about everything Maria had done for her, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the moments when Maria went hungry just so Lily could eat. She thought about the job interview, about how much it meant for their future. And then, an idea formed in her young mind. A bold, unusual, almost impossible idea. "What if I go instead?" she whispered to herself in the dark. It sounded foolish, even childish. She was only 10. What could she possibly say at an interview? But the more she thought about it, the more sense it made. She couldn't do what adults did, but she could speak from her heart. She could tell the truth about her mother, about how hard-working she was, about how much she deserved the chance. Maybe, just maybe, someone would listen. Lily got up quietly and tiptoed to her mother's room. Maria was asleep, though her face still showed pain. On the chair beside the bed lay the outfit Maria had prepared, the neat blouse, the simple skirt, freshly ironed. Lily touched the fabric gently, her eyes filling with tears. She didn't want to disappoint her mother. She didn't want to see her crushed by losing the opportunity she had prayed for. In that moment, Lily made up her mind. Tomorrow, she would go. The next morning, the alarm clock rang, but Maria couldn't even lift her head. She groaned softly, her body too weak to move. Lily! I can't do it. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. Lily, already dressed in clothes far too big for her small frame, her mother's blouse tucked in awkwardly, the skirt hanging loose, stood by the door. She had brushed her hair neatly and carried a small bag with papers she found on the table. With a deep breath, she turned to her mother and said the words that would shock her, "Mama, don't worry. I'll go instead." Maria's eyes widened. She tried to sit up, but her strength betrayed her. "No, Lily, you can't," she said weakly. But before she could continue, Lily knelt beside her, holding her hand firmly. "I can do this, Mama," Lily said with surprising firmness. "I'll tell them the truth. I'll tell them how hard you work, how much you deserve this job. I won't let them forget your name." Maria stared at her daughter, torn between fear and pride. She wanted to say no, to protect Lily from disappointment or embarrassment. But she also saw something in her daughter's eyes, a bravery that reminded her of herself, years ago, when she too faced the world with nothing but determination. With tears rolling down her cheeks, Maria pulled Lily close and whispered, "Promise me you'll be careful." Lily nodded, her small face set with determination. She kissed her mother's forehead and picked up the small bag. As she walked out the door, her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. She was only a child, yet in that moment, she carried the weight of her mother's dreams on her tiny shoulders. The bus ride to the city felt long, but Lily didn't let her nerves break her resolve. She sat quietly, rehearsing in her head what she might say. She imagined walking into the tall glass building, facing adults in suits, and telling them about her mother. She didn't know if they would laugh, dismiss her, or even listen. But she knew one thing for sure, she had to try. Back at home, Maria lay in bed, whispering prayers for her daughter's safety. Her heart ached with worry, yet deep down, she felt an overwhelming pride. She realized that no matter the outcome of that interview, her daughter had already shown the kind of courage that no job title could ever measure. And so, as the city buzzed with its usual morning rush, a little girl in an oversized blouse walked steadily toward the tall building where her mother was supposed to be. She was small, but her spirit was unshakable. She was afraid, but her love was stronger than fear. She was not there for herself, she was there for her mother. What happened next, no one in that building would ever forget. Lily had never felt so small in her life. The building in front of her stretched high into the sky, its glass windows shining in the morning sun. People in neat suits walked quickly in and out, carrying files, talking on their phones, moving with purpose. She stood at the edge of the entrance, clutching the strap of her little bag, her heart thumping so loudly she thought someone might hear it. For a moment, she almost turned back. What if they laughed at her? What if they asked questions she couldn't answer? She was only 10 years old. This was a place for adults, not children. She thought about her mother lying in bed, weak and pale, whispering that she was sorry she couldn't go. That memory gave her strength. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I'm doing this for Mama." Then she stepped inside. The lobby was even more intimidating. The floor was polished so brightly that she could see her reflection. A long counter stood at the center, behind which sat a woman with sharp glasses and a perfectly pressed suit. The woman was typing quickly on a computer, her expression serious. Around the room, people waited on couches, flipping through papers, some rehearsing quietly under their breath. These were the candidates, Lily guessed. They looked confident, grown up, ready. She swallowed hard and took small steps toward the counter. The woman at the desk looked up and blinked in surprise. She had expected another candidate in a suit, not a child in an oversized blouse and skirt that nearly brushed the floor. "Can I help you, sweetheart?" the woman asked, her voice softer now, though still puzzled. Lily tightened her grip on her bag. Her voice trembled at first, but she steadied herself. I'm here for the interview," she said. The woman raised her eyebrows. "The interview?" She leaned forward, adjusting her glasses, studying the little girl as though she hadn't heard correctly. "Do you mean your mother has an interview here?" Lily nodded quickly. "Yes, but my mom is very sick. She couldn't come. So I came instead." The room grew unusually quiet. A man waiting nearby lowered his newspaper and stared. Another candidate stopped muttering his practiced answers. Even the receptionist, who had dealt with all kinds of unusual requests before, was taken aback. "You came instead," she repeated slowly. "Yes." Lily lifted her chin, her small voice carrying a surprising firmness. "Mama worked so hard for this. She really wanted to be here. She deserves this chance. Please, can I see the person in charge?" For a moment, the receptionist didn't know what to say. Children didn't walk into job interviews. It wasn't how things worked. But there was something about Lily's serious expression, the way her eyes shone with determination despite her tiny frame, that made the woman hesitate. She could have easily said no, but her heart softened. She reached for the phone and whispered something into it. Within minutes, a tall man in a dark suit came out of a nearby office. He was one of the assistants to the CEO, his steps brisk and professional. He looked at Lily with confusion. "What's this about?" he asked the receptionist. "This child says she's here for her mother's interview," the receptionist explained quietly. The man frowned, clearly unsure. He bent down slightly to Lily's level. "Sweetheart, this is a serious interview for a big job. You can't just come in your mother's place." Lily didn't flinch. She held her ground, her little fists tightening at her sides. "I know," she said softly. "But Mama is very sick. She couldn't even get out of bed. She wanted this so much. She always says one day things will get better. I came to tell you about her. If you just listen, maybe you'll see she deserves the job." The man paused. He had no idea how to respond to that. He glanced back at the receptionist, who simply shrugged, her expression torn between professionalism and compassion. Finally, he sighed and said, "Wait here." He returned a few moments later and gestured for Lily to follow. The other candidates stared in silence, some shaking their heads, others whispering. Lily ignored them. Her small shoes tapped softly against the shiny floor as she walked behind the man. They took the elevator up to the top floor. The ride felt endless, her heart beating faster with every second. She imagined her mother's face, pale but hopeful, whispering, "Promise me you'll be careful." That promise kept her steady. When the doors opened, they stepped into a quieter hallway lined with large paintings and tall plants. At the end was a heavy wooden door. The assistant knocked once, then opened it. "Sir, you'll want to see this," he said. Inside sat Mr. Carter, the CEO. He was a man everyone respected and many feared. His hair was silver at the temples, his suit sharp, his presence commanding. Papers were spread across his desk, and he looked up with the same sternness he always carried. But when he saw the little girl standing shyly at the door, his eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "What is this?" he asked, his deep voice filling the room. The assistant cleared his throat. "This is Lily. She says she's here for her mother's interview. Her mother fell ill." For a long moment, the room was silent. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, studying the child before him. Lily felt her legs tremble, but she refused to look away. She stepped forward, her voice small but clear. "Good morning, sir. My name is Lily. My mom was supposed to be here, but she's too sick." I came instead because I couldn't let her dream disappear. Mr. Carter blinked slowly, utterly surprised. In all his years of business, he had seen many desperate candidates, many rehearsed speeches, many polished resumes. But never had a child walked into his office like this. His first instinct was to end it quickly. It wasn't professional, it wasn't how things worked. Yet something in Lily's steady eyes stopped him. "Come closer," he said at last. Lily walked up to his desk, her small hands gripping the strap of her bag tightly. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, heavy but not unkind. She swallowed and said, "My mom is the hardest worker I know. She cleans, she sews, she takes care of everything, even when she's tired. She was so happy when you called her for this interview. She practiced every day. Last night she got very sick, but she kept saying, 'I can't miss it. This is our chance.'" Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. "I know I'm just a kid. I don't know about offices or big jobs. But I know my mom. If you give her this chance, she won't let you down. She never lets anyone down." Mr. Carter leaned forward, his hands folded on the desk. His face gave nothing away, but deep inside, something stirred. He saw not just a child speaking, but a child carrying the weight of her mother's hopes on her small shoulders. He thought of his own past, of struggles he rarely spoke of, and for the first time in years, his heart softened in the middle of a workday. Behind him, the assistant and receptionist who had followed into the office watched silently, their eyes glistening. They knew this was no ordinary moment. Mr. Carter's voice broke the silence at last. "Tell me more about your mother." And with that simple request, the room shifted. The interview had begun not with polished words or printed resumes, but with the brave voice of a little girl who refused to let her mother's dream be forgotten. Mr. Carter's office was large, with tall glass windows that overlooked the busy city below. The sound of traffic and horns floated faintly through the glass, but inside, it was quiet. So quiet that Lily could hear her own heartbeat as she stood before the powerful man. She felt small, like a tiny bird standing in front of a giant tree, but she didn't let fear show on her face. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes watching her carefully. He was known for his seriousness, for his ability to make quick judgments about people. Normally, if someone came unprepared to a meeting, he would end it in seconds. But this little girl, standing nervously in her mother's clothes, was different. "Sit down," he said at last, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. Lily carefully climbed onto the seat. Her feet didn't touch the floor, so they dangled above the carpet. She held her bag tightly on her lap, as though it were a shield. "You said your mother is sick," Mr. Carter began. "Tell me more about her." Lily's eyes softened when she spoke. "Mama's name is Maria. She's the hardest worker I know. She wakes up before the sun and goes to sleep long after I do. She never complains, even when she's tired. She takes care of everything, even when we don't have much." Mr. Carter raised an eyebrow. "And why do you think she should work here? Do you know what kind of company this is?" Lily hesitated. She had no idea about business, about profits, or projects. But she remembered what her mother always said. "Mama told me this company is very big and important. She said it's a place where people can build a future. She wanted to be part of it because she said it could change our lives." She paused, then added, "I don't know about big words, sir, but I know my mom. If she works here, she'll give everything she has. She never gives up." Mr. Carter studied her face. He was used to hearing polished speeches, clever answers, and impressive resumes. But none of those ever carried the kind of honesty he heard now. There was no act, no pretension, only truth spoken from a child's heart. "And what about you?" he asked, his voice softer now. "What do you want for yourself?" Lily blinked, surprised by the question. No one ever asked her that. She lowered her gaze for a moment, then spoke quietly. I just want my mom to be happy. I want her to smile without being so tired. And, maybe one day, I want to study hard and be someone who can help her, like she helps me. The words struck something deep inside Mr. Carter. He had built his empire with determination, but behind his success was a childhood filled with struggles he rarely admitted. His own mother had worked tirelessly, just like Maria, to give him a chance in life. He remembered her worn hands, the nights she went hungry just so he could eat. For a moment, his stern expression softened. He leaned back, his mind traveling to memories long buried. Then he cleared his throat and asked, "How old are you?" 10, Lily replied, her voice small but firm. "And you came all this way on your own?" "Yes," she said. "I was scared, but I kept thinking about Mama. She wanted this so badly. I couldn't let her down." The assistant standing near the door shifted uncomfortably. He had worked with Mr. Carter for years and had never seen a child speak so bravely in this office. The receptionist who had escorted Lily upstairs dabbed her eyes quietly, moved by the little girl's courage. Mr. Carter, however, kept his gaze steady. "Do you know that most people who come here prepare for weeks, sometimes months, for an interview? They bring documents, references, experience." Lily nodded, her small hands clutching the bag tighter. Mama prepared too. She practiced every day. She wanted to be ready. But she got sick, and she couldn't even get out of bed. Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. "I know I don't have papers or big words. But I can tell you this: no one will work harder than my mom. Please believe me." Her words hung in the air like a fragile thread, but it was strong enough to pull at the hardest of hearts. Mr. Carter didn't respond right away. Instead, he stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. His reflection on the glass showed a man deep in thought, a man who had been reminded of something he had long forgotten: the raw, simple courage that comes from love. Finally, he turned back to her. "Lily," he said, his voice calmer than before, "I built this company because I wanted to give people opportunities. I know what it's like to come from nothing. I know what it means when someone fights for a chance. Your mother sounds like a fighter." Lily's eyes lit up with hope. "She is, sir. She really is." He sat down again and tapped his fingers on the desk. "But this isn't how things are done. I can't just give someone a job because their child comes in and asks. Do you understand?" Lily's heart sank. She bit her lip and nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I understand. I had to try. I didn't want Mama to lose hope." The honesty in her voice made the room heavy with silence. For the first time in a long time, Mr. Carter found himself at a loss for words. He wasn't looking at just a child, he was looking at bravery in its purest form. Behind him, the clock ticked softly, marking the minutes. The assistant shifted again, clearly moved but waiting for his boss's decision. The receptionist, too, held her breath. Finally, Mr. Carter spoke. "You've done something most adults don't dare to do. You walked into a place that scared you, stood in front of someone who could have dismissed you, and spoke from your heart. That takes courage." Lily didn't know if that was praise or a polite way of ending things. She just sat quietly, her small hands folded on her lap. Mr. Carter studied her one last time, then leaned forward. "Here's what I'll do. I'll meet with your mother when she feels better. Tell her not to worry about missing today. I'll make sure she gets another chance." Lily gasped softly, her eyes widening. "Really, sir? You'll give her another chance?" He nodded firmly. "Yes. Because if she raised a daughter like you, then I believe she must be someone worth meeting." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, but she smiled brightly. It was the smile of a child who had carried her mother's hope into a room and managed to keep it alive. The assistant cleared his throat, his own eyes misty. The receptionist turned away, pretending to adjust her glasses, though she was wiping away tears. Mr. Carter stood and walked around his desk. He placed a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "You did well today. Now go home and take care of your mother. Tell her to get better. Tell her I'll be waiting to meet her." Lily nodded quickly, her heart soaring. She stood from the chair, bowed her head respectfully the way she had seen adults do, and whispered, "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." As she left the office, escorted by the assistant, the entire floor seemed different to her. The people she passed in the hallway no longer looked intimidating. The elevator ride down didn't feel endless. Her steps were lighter, her heart stronger. She had walked into the office of a millionaire CEO with nothing but her mother's dream and her own courage. And somehow, against all odds, she had been heard. Back at the lobby, as she walked out the tall glass doors, the morning sun touched her face. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of relief. She had done what she came for. Now, all she wanted was to run home and tell her mother the news that hope was not lost, that the dream still lived. And high above, in his office, Mr. Carter stood at the window again, watching the little figure disappear into the busy streets. His thoughts were heavy, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He whispered softly to himself, "Sometimes courage comes in the smallest packages." The office had quieted down after Lily left, but the effect of her visit lingered like a soft echo in every corner of the room. Mr. Carter sat at his desk, staring at the papers spread out before him. Numbers, charts, and contracts filled the pages, but for once, he couldn't focus on any of them. Instead, he saw the small figure of a little girl in her mother's clothes, speaking with a courage most adults couldn't summon. He leaned back in his chair, pressing his hands together. It wasn't often that something unsettled him. He was a man who thrived on certainty, on rules, on things being done a certain way. But Lily's words had broken through that wall. She hadn't come with polished sentences or impressive degrees. She had come with love, simple, honest love for her mother. And it had shaken him more than he cared to admit. Later that afternoon, as he walked through the office, he noticed the whispers. The receptionist had already shared the story with a few colleagues, and soon almost everyone knew. A little girl walked in for her mother's interview, they said. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others smiled softly. For many of them, who had grown used to the routine rhythm of office life, the story was like a spark, something that reminded them of why people worked so hard in the first place, for family, for love, for dreams bigger than themselves. That evening, when the building had grown quiet, Mr. Carter stayed behind. He rarely left before midnight, but today felt different. He stood once again by the tall window, the city glowing with lights below. He remembered his own childhood, something he had buried under years of success. His mother's face came to him, the lines of exhaustion, the quiet sacrifices, the way she had believed in him when no one else did. He had built his empire, but in that moment, he knew he had done it all on the foundation of her love. The next morning, Lily was back at home, sitting by her mother's side. Maria was still weak, but her eyes searched her daughter's face with worry. "What happened, Lily?" she asked softly. "Did anyone listen to you? Did they send you away?" Lily's eyes sparkled as she shook her head. "No, Mama. The boss himself, Mr. Carter, he listened to me. He said when you get better, he will meet you. He promised." Maria's lips parted in disbelief. Tears welled in her tired eyes. "He said that? Truly?" "Yes," Lily whispered, hugging her mother tightly. "I told him everything about you. I told him how hard you work, how you never give up. Mama, he believed me." Maria buried her face in her daughter's hair and wept silently. It wasn't just the promise of a second chance. It was the realization that her daughter, her little girl, had carried her voice when she could not. Days passed, and Maria slowly regained her strength. She wasn't fully well yet, but the hope in her heart seemed to give her energy. She prepared again, carefully, this time even more determined. She knew this chance was rare, and she didn't want to waste it. Meanwhile, in the company, Mr. Carter couldn't shake the memory of Lily. During meetings, while others spoke about profits and strategies, his mind would drift back to that small, brave voice. For the first time in a long while, he found himself asking questions about the lives of his employees, their families, their struggles, their stories. He realized he had spent so many years focusing on numbers that he had almost forgotten the people behind them. When the day finally came for Maria to attend her rescheduled interview, she walked into the building with trembling hands. She wore the same neatly pressed blouse, but this time it fit her, not her daughter. Lily held her hand tightly until they reached the lobby. "You can do this, Mama," she said with confidence far beyond her years. Maria smiled down at her, her eyes glistening. "I wouldn't even be here if it weren't for you, my brave girl." The receptionist, who remembered Lily well, greeted them warmly. "Good luck, Mrs. Maria," she said kindly, her eyes soft. Word had spread, and many in the office silently rooted for her. Inside the CEO's office, Maria took a deep breath before stepping in. Mr. Carter looked up from his desk as she entered. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Maria bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, sir," she began, her voice shaking. "Thank you for giving me another chance." Mr. Carter studied her face. She looked tired, but her eyes shone with quiet strength. "Your daughter spoke very highly of you," he said. Maria's lips trembled into a small smile. "Lily, she is my whole world. I didn't know she would come here. I was too weak to stop her. But I am grateful she had the courage I didn't." "She told me you're a fighter," Mr. Carter said, his tone steady. "That you never give up." Maria nodded. "I try, sir. Life hasn't been easy, but I promised myself I would give my daughter a better future. That is why I wanted this job so badly." The interview began, but it wasn't like the usual ones. Mr. Carter didn't just ask about skills or experience. He asked about her life, her struggles, her dreams. Maria answered with honesty, the same honesty her daughter had shown. She spoke of the years she spent juggling jobs, the nights she stayed awake sewing clothes, the mornings she cleaned houses before rushing Lily to school. She admitted her weaknesses but highlighted her determination. As she spoke, Mr. Carter listened carefully. He wasn't just evaluating an applicant, he was seeing a story, a life shaped by resilience. He saw in her the same qualities he had once seen in his own mother: the strength to endure, the courage to keep moving forward even when the road was hard. At one point, Maria's voice broke. "I don't ask for favors, sir. All I want is a chance. If you give me that, I promise I will not waste it." The room grew quiet. Mr. Carter leaned back, his face unreadable, but inside, he felt a deep respect for the woman before him. After the interview, when Maria stepped out, Lily rushed to her side, eyes wide with curiosity. "How was it, Mama?" Maria hugged her tightly. "I don't know what will happen, Lily. But I spoke from my heart. That's all I could do." Unbeknownst to them, many staff members had been silently watching, their hearts touched. For them, this wasn't just about a job, it was about witnessing a story of love and determination unfold right in front of them. Inside his office, Mr. Carter sat quietly, thinking. For years, he had hired people based on qualifications alone. But today, he realized something deeper: sometimes, the best employees weren't just those with perfect resumes, they were the ones with stories of strength, who carried within them the will to fight for something greater than themselves. He looked at the empty chair where Maria had sat and whispered to himself, her daughter was right. She is a fighter. And in that moment, his decision became clear. The next few days felt endless for Maria and Lily. They didn't know what Mr. Carter had decided. Maria tried to stay calm, but her hands shook whenever the phone rang. She would pause, take a deep breath, and then answer only to find it was a neighbor, or a friend checking on her health. Each time it wasn't the company, her heart sank a little more. Lily, however, never lost hope. She sat by her mother each night, holding her hand. "Don't worry, Mama," she would whisper. "I know he will call. He promised he would meet you. He saw how strong you are." Maria smiled faintly at her daughter's confidence. Inside, though, she battled doubt. She thought of all the times life had disappointed her, all the times she had worked hard only to be overlooked. But when she looked at Lily's shining eyes, she felt a flicker of strength. She told herself she had to believe for her daughter's sake. One morning, as sunlight poured through their small window, the phone finally rang. Maria's heart nearly stopped. She picked it up with trembling fingers. "Hello." A calm voice on the other end introduced himself as Mr. Carter's assistant. "Mrs. Maria, the CEO has made his decision. He would like you to come to the office tomorrow morning." Maria pressed a hand over her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Yes, of course. Thank you." After she hung up, Lily bounced with excitement. "Mama, I told you. I told you he would call." Maria hugged her daughter tightly, whispering, "Whatever happens, Lily, it's because of you. You gave me this chance." That night, Maria laid out her clothes once again, carefully pressing them with an iron. She went over her answers in her head, but mostly, she prayed. Not just for herself, but for Lily, that she could finally give her child a future filled with security and peace. The next morning, Maria walked into the company with Lily holding her hand. The same receptionist who had once seen Lily walk in alone greeted them warmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Maria," she said with a smile. "We've been expecting you." Maria's heart thudded as they entered the elevator. She glanced at her daughter, who gave her a thumbs up and whispered, "You've got this, Mama." When they reached the top floor, Maria was led into Mr. Carter's office once more. This time, she felt a little stronger. She wasn't just a woman desperate for work, she was a mother who had already proven her courage through her daughter's bravery. Mr. Carter stood by the window, just as he had before, but when he turned, his expression was softer than she remembered. "Mrs. Maria," he said, "please, sit down." Maria took her seat, her palms damp with nervousness. For a moment, silence hung in the room. Then Mr. Carter spoke. "I have interviewed many people in my career. Some had impressive qualifications, some had years of experience. But very few left a mark on me the way you and your daughter have." Maria's breath caught. She opened her mouth to respond, but he raised a hand gently, continuing. "When Lily walked in here, I expected a mistake, maybe a child lost or confused. But instead, I met a little girl who carried her mother's dream with more courage than most adults carry their own. She told me about your hard work, your sacrifices, and your strength. And yesterday, when you came here, I saw it for myself." Maria felt tears sting her eyes. She lowered her head, whispering, "I only wanted a chance, sir." "And you will have it," Mr. Carter said firmly. "I am offering you the position. Not because of pity, but because I believe you are exactly the kind of person this company needs. Someone who knows the value of perseverance, someone who understands responsibility, someone who will never give up when things are hard." Maria gasped softly, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but this time, they were tears of relief and joy. Thank you, sir. You don't know what this means to us." Mr. Carter's expression softened even more. "Actually, I think I do. Years ago, my own mother worked herself to exhaustion just to make sure I could eat and study. I built everything I have today because of her sacrifices. Seeing your daughter reminded me of that. It reminded me of where I came from." Maria wiped her tears, her heart swelling with gratitude. She thought of how Lily had carried her dream into this very office, and now that dream was real. At that moment, the door opened slightly, and Lily peeked in. She had been waiting outside, unable to sit still. When she saw her mother's tearful smile, she rushed in. "Mama? What happened?" Maria pulled her close, hugging her tightly. "We did it, Lily. I got the job." Lily squealed with joy, wrapping her small arms around her mother's neck. "I knew it. I knew you could do it." Mr. Carter watched them quietly, his stern businesslike mask replaced by a rare smile. Then he cleared his throat and added, "Lily, you should know something. You didn't just help your mother get a job. You reminded me, and everyone here, of what really matters. You reminded us of family, of love, of courage. For that, I owe you a thank you too." Lily blushed, ducking her head shyly. "I just wanted to help Mama," she whispered. Mr. Carter crouched down so he was eye level with her. "And you did, more than you'll ever know." He paused, then added, "I'd like to do something for you too. I want to make sure you can study without worrying about money. I will arrange for a scholarship for your education. You'll have the chance to chase your dreams, just as your mother is now chasing hers." Lily's eyes widened, and she turned to her mother, who was too overwhelmed to speak. Maria clasped her hands together, her voice breaking. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You've given us more than I ever imagined." "You don't need to thank me," Mr. Carter said kindly. "Just keep doing what you've always done, fight for each other, care for each other. That is more valuable than anything money can buy." The room was filled with quiet emotion. For Maria and Lily, this was more than a job offer or a scholarship. It was the turning of a page, the beginning of a brighter chapter in their lives. When they left the building that day, the staff who had witnessed the story unfold smiled and nodded at them. Some even clapped softly, as though congratulating them without words. The story of the little girl who came for her mother's interview had already become something people whispered about with admiration. Out on the busy street, Maria held Lily's hand tightly. The world around them was still loud and chaotic, but inside their hearts, there was peace. For the first time in years, Maria felt the heavy weight of worry lift from her shoulders. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but now she had hope, and hope was everything. Lily skipped happily beside her, humming a tune. She looked up at her mother and said, "See, Mama? I told you dreams come true if we don't give up." Maria laughed through her tears, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "Yes, my brave girl. You were right. Dreams do come true." And somewhere high above in his tall office, Mr. Carter stood by the window once more, watching the mother and daughter disappear into the crowd. For the first time in many years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, not pride in his success, not satisfaction in his wealth, but a quiet joy in having helped change two lives. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the greatest truths." And with that, the story of a little girl's courage, a mother's perseverance, and a CEO's compassion was sealed not just as a tale inside the walls of a company, but as a reminder that love and bravery can open doors no resume ever could.